Grow still now. Let the last of the day's light go from behind your eyelids. Let the sounds of the world become distant, then more distant, then the gentlest possible background. The way music fades at the end of a record and the silence that follows has a different quality than any silence before the music began. You are at the threshold, the particular threshold that every human being crosses every night. The threshold between waking and sleeping, between the daylit world of activity and the deeper, quieter, stranger country that sleep contains. Tonight, we are not simply going to cross that threshold. Tonight, we are going to explore what is on the other side of it, the realm that the ancient Greeks understood as a real place, governed by real divine beings, subject to its own laws and its own geography and its own forms of wonder. Tonight, we are going with the god who shapes the dreams that find you in the dark. We are going with Morpheus. In the Greek understanding of how the cosmos came to be, there is a beginning that is different from many other beginnings. Not light first, not the word or the intention or the divine decision to create. The Greek cosmos begins with chaos, the great void, the yawning emptiness that was not nothing but was the potential for everything. And from chaos, the first beings emerged. Among the very first was Nyx, night herself. She did not arrive as a consequence of something else. She was among the primordial beings, among the first expressions of what the cosmos was, the fundamental qualities that preceded the more specific arrangements of the world. She was old in the way that only things which have been present at the very beginning can be old, a depth of age that makes the term old inadequate, that requires instead words like ancient or primordial or before. She was beautiful. The mythology of Nyx is one of the more interesting cases in the Greek tradition of the ambivalence that great power can produce. Homer describes Zeus himself as being afraid of her, afraid in the way that even the king of the gods is cautious around something that is both older than him and entirely its own. When Hypnos, Nyx's son, had done something that angered Zeus, he fled to his mother, and Zeus did not pursue, because even Zeus did not go into night's territory looking for a fight. She moved through the cosmos in her dark chariot, her trailing robes the night sky, the stars she wore as ornaments giving the darkness its specific and beautiful quality. She was not threatening. She was simply the dark, which is not the same thing as threatening, despite the confusion that certain kinds of fear produce between the two. She was the mother of many things. Of many things that the day produces are the opposite, or the relief from, or the deeper texture beneath. Her children included Hypnos, sleep, and Thanatos, death, his twin, and Eris, strife, and the Oneiroi, the dream spirits, who were many. And among the Oneiroi, the most important, the most capable, the one who became the dream god that mortals remembered, Morpheus. She was, in short, the mother of the whole of what the night contained. Let her presence settle around you, not as something threatening, as something ancient and encompassing and, in its way, deeply kind. The dark that Nyx represented was the dark that the tired world needed, the turning of the earth away from the sun, the cooling and the quieting, the permission to stop that the night provides to everything alive. She was the permission to stop. In a cave somewhere at the western edge of the world, where the land finally gave out and the great river Oceanus ran its encircling course between the known and the unknown, Hypnos made his home. The cave of sleep was described by the ancient tradition with a specificity that suggests genuine imagination rather than mere convention, as if whoever shaped the description had actually been there, had sat at the entrance and noticed what was there to notice. The cave was surrounded by poppies. The red poppy was the sacred flower of Hypnos, the flower that produces in its processing the earliest medicines for sleep and the easing of pain, the flower that the ancient world understood, through long empirical observation, to be connected to what Hypnos gave. The poppies grew so thickly around the cave's entrance that they formed a red field visible from a distance, their heads nodding in a wind that was gentle and constant. Inside, the River Lethe ran. Lethe, forgetting, one of the 5 rivers of the underworld, but also present here at the edge of the world, flowing through the cave of sleep in its soft and murmuring course, its sound the sound of forgetting, which is not a harsh sound but a gentle one, the sound of thoughts becoming less insistent, of the day's accumulations releasing their hold. The waters of Lethe were cool and still at the edges where they moved slowly. They were deeper and faster in the center, but even there the movement was not turbulent. The whole quality of the river was one of dissolution, not destruction, but the gentle dissolution of things that no longer need to be held with such insistence. The day's concerns, drifting loose in the current of Lethe's forgetting, becoming smaller and less urgent, and finally, at the bend where the river curved out of sight, simply gone. Hypnos himself lay in his cave. He lay always in rest. This was his nature and his function, the god of sleep existing in a perpetual state of what he gave. Around him, his brothers and children rested too, the whole family of night spirits in their various repose. The cave was full of rest. Full of it in the way that a library is full of books, not empty, but populated by a specific and particular thing. He had wings, small wings, dark feathered, folded against his sides when he slept. They were not the wings of a powerful creature. They were delicate, the wings of movement through the specific medium of sleep rather than through the air. When he flew through the sleeping world, which was not the same as the waking world in any of its properties. He was gentle. The mythology preserves this quality of Hypnos with consistency. He was the god of sleep, which is the gift given freely to everyone, which is democratic in a way that few divine gifts are. He gave sleep to kings and to beggars, to heroes and to ordinary people, to the old and to the very young. He gave it without judgment. He gave it as a gift without condition. He also gave it as a mercy, the deep sleep after grief, the sleep that comes to the exhausted body that has been pushed past its limits and finally receives the rest it was demanding. The sleep that heals. The mythology understood this. The ancient Greeks understood sleep as something that happened to you and that, when it happened well, restored you to something you had lost in the waking hours. Hypnos provided that restoration. His twin was Thanatos, death, and the mythology held them as mirror images. Sleep and death, twins. The ancient world could see the resemblance. Both involved the departure of the active consciousness from the body. Both were associated with night. Both were gifts that arrived uninvited and fundamentally changed the state of the recipient. The difference was in the returning. From Hypnos's gift, the sleeper returned. From Thanatos's, they did not. The ancient sculptors who depicted them represented them together. Two young men, winged, often bearing extinguished torches, their expressions peaceful in the specific way of beings who preside over peace. They were not frightening. They were simply what they were. The two faces of the same night, one temporary and one permanent. Hypnos lived in his cave at the world's edge and let the poppies nod around him and the Lethe run its quiet course, and the deep rest he embodied move outward from his dwelling across the world like the tide moving from its source. From the cave of sleep or from Nyx directly, the tradition varies, the Oniroi came. They were many. The dream spirits were a great number of beings, each one responsible for a different kind of dream, each one with its own nature and its own way of moving through the sleeping world. The mythology imagined them as a flock, a multitude, moving together through the night in a cloud of possibility, spreading out across the sleeping world to each sleeper's bed with their particular cargo. At their center was Morpheus. He was the most important of the Oniroi for a specific reason. He could take human form. While his brothers specialized in other aspects of dreaming, Icelus could take the form of animals. Phantasos took the form of the inanimate world, rocks and water and earth appearing in dreams. Morpheus appeared in dreams as a human being. He was the one who could carry messages between the divine and the mortal world through the medium of sleep, appearing as a person to the sleeping dreamer, speaking in a human voice, delivering in a form that the sleeping human mind could understand what needed to be conveyed. He had wings, two large, dark wings, which he spread when he needed to travel and folded when he arrived. The wings allowed him to move through the dream world at whatever speed the dream required, which was not the speed of physical travel but the speed of story. Faster when the narrative needed it, slower in the moments worth dwelling in. He could change his face. This was the specific gift that made him what he was, the capacity to take any human form, to appear as anyone the dreamer would recognize. He could come as a father or a friend or a soldier or a king, or anyone whose face would open the dreamer's attention in the specific way that the dream required. The ancient tradition gives him multiple descriptions. Sometimes he is winged but in human form, beautiful and dark-haired. Sometimes he is wrapped in darkness as if the night itself were a garment. Sometimes he is barely visible, a presence in the dream rather than a figure, the sense of someone being there rather than the sight of them. He moved through the night with a patience that was appropriate to his task. He did not hurry. Dreams, properly experienced, are not in a hurry. At the boundary of the dream world, two gates stood. This is one of the most famous details in all of ancient literature. Virgil used it, Homer used it, the image passed from Greek to Latin tradition and from Latin to everything that came after. The two gates through which dreams passed into the sleeping world. The gate of horn, the gate of ivory. Through the gate of horn came true dreams, the visions that were genuine, that carried real information, that would prove accurate when the dreamer woke. Horn was associated with truth in the ancient world partly through the pun available in the Greek language between the word for horn and the word for fulfillment, and partly through the practical observation that horn is a material that is translucent when polished thin. You can see through it, which is what true dreams allow you to do. Through the gate of ivory came false dreams, the visions that were beautiful or frightening or vivid but were not true, that would lead the dreamer who followed them into confusion. Ivory was white and polished and opaque. It caught the light beautifully, but you could not see through it. The dream that came through the ivory gate was lovely and deceiving simultaneously. Morpheus passed through both gates. He was not a god of only true dreams or only false ones. He was the god of the medium itself, the divine being who gave form to whatever dream was traveling to whatever sleeper. The sorting happened elsewhere, at the level of what the dreamer was meant to receive. Morpheus shaped it and carried it. The gates of horn and ivory stood at the edge of the dream world and the waking world simultaneously. They were the threshold, the permeable boundary between the two states that every sleeping person crossed without knowing. What came through one gate found the dreamer and became experience. What came through the other found the dreamer and became experience too, but of a different quality. The ancient Greeks were careful about this. They knew that not all dreams were true. They knew that some dreams were sending something real, a divine communication, a warning, an encouragement, and that others were simply the internal activity of a sleeping mind, elaborating from the day's events or the body's condition or some random firing of the dreaming mechanism. They did not have a consistent method for distinguishing between the two. They tried augury, they tried asking priests, they tried simply paying attention to what came true and what did not. The gates of horn and ivory were their myth's acknowledgement of the complexity. The dream world contained both kinds, and you could not always know which gate your dream had come through until after the dream had played itself out in the waking world. There was a wisdom in not knowing. The uncertainty kept the dreamer awake to possibility in a way that certainty would not have. Let us go inside the dream world and look at what is there. It was not a single landscape. The dream world in the Greek understanding was not a fixed geography. It was not like the underworld, with its rivers named and its regions mapped and its guardians posted at specific posts. The dream world was more various than that, more responsive to what each dreamer brought to it, more willing to be different things at different times. But it had certain constants. The River Lethe ran through it. We have mentioned Lethe already, the river of forgetting that ran through the cave of sleep. In the dream world, Lethe was always audible, always near. Its sound was the background sound of the dream world, not intrusive but constant, the continuous soft note of forgetting beneath whatever else was happening. The sleeper in the dream world was always, at some level, in the vicinity of Lethe, always subject to its gentle current that wanted to carry away whatever was too insistently remembered. This is what dreaming sometimes feels like, the sense that what was so certain in the waking world has become less certain, that the walls between different times have become permeable, that you are simultaneously in the present and in some other moment, and the difference between them is softer than it was in the day. The Mnemosyne, the spring of memory, was also present. In the underworld geography, Mnemosyne was the alternative to Lethe. The dead who drank from Mnemosyne rather than Lethe retained what they had known and could speak it. In the dream world, Mnemosyne appeared in different form as a quality of the dream light, a quality of certain dreams that had the specific character of remembered things rather than invented ones, dreams that felt like returning somewhere you had been rather than arriving somewhere new. The landscape of the dream world was mist and light and the specific quality of places that are half remembered, the architecture of dreams which obeys its own version of architectural logic, where rooms connect to other rooms in ways that are internally consistent without being externally possible, where distance works differently, where time moves at its own pace. Morpheus moved through this landscape with the ease of a native. He knew which approach would find which dreamer's inner landscape, which form to take to enter each sleeping mind's specific story without disturbing it. He moved through the mist and the light and the half-remembered places with the gentleness of someone who understands that the sleeping mind is in a delicate state, open and receptive and not defended in the way the waking mind defends itself, and that the gift of dreams requires care proportional to the openness it enters. The primary mythology of Morpheus, the specific stories the tradition preserved most carefully, centered on his role as messenger. The gods needed, sometimes, to communicate with mortals. The ordinary channels were various: oracles, omens, the voices of priests, the pattern of birds in flight. But direct communication during waking hours required either a divine apparition, frightening, often, and hard to integrate into ordinary life, or the slower mediation of the oracular tradition, accurate but cryptic and requiring interpretation. Dreams were different. In dreams, the divine could speak in something closer to a human voice, in a context where the dreamer's defenses were naturally lower, where the message could be received without the static of social performance and ego protection that waking hours provided. And Morpheus could appear as anyone, could wear any face, take any form that would open the dreamer to the message. In the Iliad, when Zeus wanted to send a message to Agamemnon, to tell the Greek commander something important about the course of the war, he sent a dream. The dream appeared to Agamemnon in the form of Nestor, the old and wise advisor whose face Agamemnon associated with trustworthy counsel. The dream Nestor told Agamemnon what Zeus wanted him to know. This is Morpheus's work, taking the divine intention and shaping it into a form the mortal mind could receive, appearing as the person the dreamer would most readily listen to, speaking in the voice that the dreamer would most readily trust. The mythology does not always give Morpheus's name in these messenger dream stories. Sometimes he is simply the dream, the figure in the dream. But he is there, the divine craftsman of the communication, the one who took the raw material of a divine message and shaped it into human experience. There is something deeply thoughtful about this arrangement, and the ancient Greeks clearly found it thoughtful too. The way they return to it again and again in their literature suggests they were drawn to the idea. The idea that the communication between the divine and the human happened best in the vulnerable space of sleep. That the gods spoke most clearly when the mortal was least defended, most open, most willing to receive what was being sent. The dream as a form of divine consideration, as if the divine respected the difficulty of waking consciousness enough to wait for the softer hours. Among all the dream stories in the ancient tradition, the most beautiful, the one that most fully expresses what Morpheus's gift meant to the mortals who received it, is the story of Alcyone and Ceyx. Ceyx was a king, and he loved his wife Alcyone with the specific and genuine love of people who have found in each other the particular presence they need most. He was setting out on a sea voyage, against Alcyone's prayers and pleading, because she had the specific fear of the sea that those who have learned from the sea's nature tend to have. The sea is indifferent to the desires of those who sail on it, and Alcyone knew this. He went anyway. He promised to return. The storm came, as storms come, suddenly, completely, without the courtesy of any announcement. The ship was taken by the sea and Ceyx with it, and his last thought, the ancient tradition tells us, was of Alcyone. She did not know. She was at home in their palace, praying for him. She had made an altar to Hera, the goddess of marriage, and she prayed each day for Ceyx's safe return. She prayed in the sincere and patient way of someone who has no information and is therefore filling the information's absence with hope. Hera heard, and Hera, the goddess of marriage, who understood what this woman's love was and what it deserved, sent Iris, the rainbow goddess, the divine messenger, down to the cave of sleep. Iris came into the cave of sleep, all rainbow color in the mist gray of the cave, and she spoke to Hypnos, and Hypnos woke just enough to hear her. She asked for a dream to be sent to Alcyone, a dream that would tell her the truth. Hypnos woke one of the Oneiroi. He woke Morpheus. Morpheus received his instructions. Take the form of Ceyx. Go to Alcyone. Tell her what happened. He flew from the cave of sleep. He crossed the night world, through the mist and the light and the half-remembered places, and he arrived at the palace where Alcyone slept. He stood at the edge of her dream, and he took the form of her husband. The dream that Alcyone received was Ceyx, not a frightening apparition. The tradition is careful about this. The dream seeks was gentle. He told her what had happened with the specific tenderness of someone who has learned that difficult truths, delivered with love, are still love. He told her that he had not suffered long. He told her that the sea had taken him, and that this was what had happened, and that she should grieve and live. She woke reaching for him. She found the empty space beside her, and she understood. The story continues into transformation. She and Sikhs are eventually transformed into kingfisher birds, which is the mythology's way of giving the story a completion that is not loss. The kingfishers nest on the sea. They nest in the calm days of winter, the days that are still called halcyon days in their memory, days of unexpected peace in the cold season, given by the gods in honor of their love. But the heart of the story is the dream. The gift that Morpheus gave Alcyone was the truth, delivered in the form she could most receive it. Not a neutral delivery, not a clinical communication of facts. A human face, a human voice, the specific face and voice that she loved most, saying the hard thing with all the care that she would have wanted the person she loved most to use. This is what the Greek tradition understood Morpheus to be at his best. Not merely a messenger, a shaper of the message into the most humane form available. The great heroes of the Greek world received their share of dreams. Agamemnon before the critical campaign decisions. Achilles in the days of the Trojan War, visited by the shade of Patroclus in a dream that was simultaneously Morpheus's work and something more. The dead and the dreaming sharing the same borderland, the same liminal space where the ordinary rules of the waking world did not fully apply. Penelope, in the years of waiting for Odysseus, dreamed of him. Not the Morpheus-sent divine messages that carried specific instructions, but the ordinary dreams of someone who loves a person with total devotion and whose mind in sleep does what her mind in waking was too disciplined to fully allow. Imagines his presence, reconstructs his face, hears his voice. She told a suitor about these dreams in a passage of the Odyssey that is one of Homer's most poignant. She described a dream of geese, 20 geese, who she watched with pleasure as they ate in her courtyard, and then an eagle came and killed them, and she wept. And in the dream, the eagle came back and spoke to her with the voice of her husband and told her the geese were the suitors and the eagle was Odysseus and he was coming home. Was this a true dream through the gate of horn, or a dream of her own wishful mind through the gate of ivory? She did not know. The suitor she told it to tried to interpret it for her. She dismissed his interpretation, not from certainty but from the specific quality of a person who has learned that hope without evidence is a fragile thing to build on. But the dream was there. Whatever gate it had come through, it was there. Morpheus, or something that did the work of Morpheus, had been present in her sleeping hours, had been shaping the night into the form her love took. The dream of Penelope is the most human of the hero dreams in the Greek tradition. Not a divine communication, not a warning or a strategy. Simply the mind of a woman who loves her husband, given back to her in the form of images that the day was too pressured to allow. Morpheus tended these dreams too. Not every dream was a message. Some were simply the mind's own work, and Morpheus's presence in the dream world was part of what made that work possible. The divine shaper of human form in dreams presiding over all the ordinary dreams as well as the extraordinary ones. Between his flights through the sleeping world, Morpheus returned to the cave. The cave of sleep was different at the hours when the Oneiroi were all home. In the early part of the night, when the Western world was still awake or newly sleeping, before the great distribution of dreams across the sleeping population of the earth had sent every dream spirit to its appointed sleeper. It was full then, the poppies nodding outside, the Lethe running its quiet course within, Hypnos in his eternal rest, his wings folded, his face the face of serene unconsciousness. The other dream spirits in their various states of preparation, Icelus and Phantasos and the many others, each one specific and various, each one the product of Nyx's comprehensive imagination. Morpheus sat among them. He was not still in the way that his father Hypnos was still. There was something active in him even at rest, the quality of attention, the quality of readiness. He was always listening for the sound of his name in the world above, always half attending to the sleeping mortals across the world, the vast and various chorus of sleeping minds that his work was always in relationship with. He thought, in these in-between hours, about the dreams he had given. The mythology does not preserve what he thought, how would it? But the imagination can attend to the thinking of a being whose work is entirely in the human interior, in the specific and private spaces of mortal minds. He would have been uniquely positioned, of all divine beings, to understand human experience, not from the outside, as the Olympian gods understood it from their high vantage, but from the inside, from the specific and intimate interior of the sleeping mind. He would have understood grief. He had entered the dreams of those who grieved, had shaped himself into the faces of those they missed, had delivered the gentle, hard truths that the universe sometimes required to be delivered. He would have understood love. He had been in the dreams of Penelope and of Alcyone and of all the others who lay down each night with the specific person who was absent and filled the absence with the imagination's reconstruction of that person. He would have understood fear and hope and the specific combination of the two that appears in prophetic dreams. The dream that tells you something you needed to know but that changes everything by the telling. He would have understood, in his own way, what it was to be mortal. Not by being mortal, he was not mortal, he did not age, he would not die. But by having been present night after night, in the most vulnerable and honest hours of mortal life. By having seen what mortals were like when they were not performing anything for anyone. He would have found them extraordinary. The ancient Greeks thought about dreams more carefully than many subsequent cultures. They had a word for it, oniromancy, the art of divination from dreams, which was widely practiced and genuinely taken seriously as a method of understanding what was true and what would be. The sanctuaries of Asclepius, the healer god, were also sanctuaries for dream incubation. People who needed healing would come and sleep in the temple precincts, performing the preparatory rituals and then sleeping in hope of a healing dream that would tell them what to do. This practice, incubation, the deliberate seeking of wisdom through the medium of sleep, was one of the great forms of ancient Greek religion. It took seriously the possibility that the sleeping mind had access to things the waking mind did not. That what arrived in dreams was sometimes more trustworthy than what arrived in waking analysis. That the night had its own epistemology, its own way of knowing. Aristotle wrote about dreams. He was skeptical, he was Aristotle, and his mode was skepticism applied systematically. He was not sure that dreams were divine communications. He thought they might be the product of the body's interior conditions expressing themselves in the particular symbolic language of sleep. He was not entirely wrong about this, and the Greek tradition was large enough to contain both the myth of Morpheus and the skeptical analysis of the philosopher. But even Aristotle's skeptical account preserved something essential. The understanding that dreams were a different kind of knowing. Not to be dismissed, to be taken seriously in their own terms. The Stoic philosophers who came later had their own understanding. Dreams were part of the divine order of things, expressions of the logos, the rational principle that governed the cosmos. Even the strange dreams, the dreams that seemed random or incoherent, were part of the pattern. Everything that happened in the cosmos, including what happened in sleeping minds, was part of the continuous self-expression of a rational universe. The Pythagoreans, that school of philosophy and mysticism that traced itself back to Pythagoras and his teaching, believed that the soul was most free during sleep, freed temporarily from the body, able to range further and perceive more clearly. This is the Greek philosophical version of what many traditions across many cultures have understood. That sleep is not the suspension of the self but a different state of the self, and that the self in that different state has access to things the waking self cannot reach. Morpheus was the mythology's version of this philosophical understanding. He was the narrative form of the ancient conviction that the night meant something, that the dreams of sleeping mortals were not random noise but a form of communication and experience with its own integrity and its own value. He shaped the dreams. He was the evidence that they were shaped by something, that the night was not empty. Among those who came most consistently to Morpheus's domain were travelers. Travelers sleep in unfamiliar places, a specific and universal experience of anyone who has spent time away from their own bed. The body's rhythms are disrupted. The sounds are different. The darkness has different qualities in different places. Denser, more or less complete, carrying different smells and temperatures, and the sounds of different wildlife or different urban activity. The traveler's sleep is lighter than the home sleep, and lighter sleep is closer to the boundary, closer to the place where Morpheus works. The Greek world was full of travelers. the merchants who moved by sea between the city-states and the foreign shores, the soldiers who camped in unfamiliar countries, the athletes who traveled to the great festivals, the Olympics, the Pythian Games, the Isthmian Games, sleeping in makeshift camps and unfamiliar lodgings, the priests and pilgrims who made the long journeys to the great oracles. All of them, in their traveling, brought something to their sleep that the person in their own bed did not bring: heightened receptivity. The traveler's mind was already opened by novelty, already processing the unfamiliar, already in a state of more active relationship with its own experience than the person in the comfortable routine of home. Into this heightened receptivity, Morpheus came with his particular gifts. The traveler's dream was often the dream of home. Penelope's weaving, the smell of a specific kitchen, the sound of a voice that had been silent for months. Morpheus offered these, not as false comfort, not as the Ivory Gate's dreams, but as what they were: the mind's genuine love for what it had left, expressed in the language of image and scene that sleep makes possible. The traveler's dream was also sometimes the dream of where they were going, the destination appearing before arrival, sometimes as it was and sometimes as the imagination of it, the two not always distinguishable from each other. He gave the sailors who slept on their ships the dreams of the sea they were crossing, the specific quality of dreaming aboard a ship that the ancients knew well, the rhythm of the waves carrying into sleep, the dream and the physical reality in constant correspondence. And sometimes he gave travelers the dreams that were necessary, the warning before the dangerous pass, the reassurance before the ordeal, the guidance before the choice. The Gate of Horn, the true dream, serving the specific needs of someone far from home who needed what the waking world could not yet offer. The mythology does not specifically address the dreams of children, but the mythology's silence does not mean Morpheus's absence. The dreams of children are among the most vivid. Anyone who has watched a small child sleep and seen the expressions crossing their face knows the density of what happens there. The laughter, the concern, the movement of the eyes behind the closed lids, the occasional sound of a word or a phrase reaching the surface. Children's dreams are the fullest expression of what Morpheus's gift is in its most natural state, without the filtering of adult consciousness, without the habit of skepticism and interpretation that years of waking experience install. The child's dreaming mind receives what comes with total openness. The ancient world understood this. Children's dreams were taken seriously as potentially prophetic, potentially divine, precisely because of this openness. The child had not yet learned to dismiss what came in the night, had not yet built the categories that adult consciousness uses to organize experience into the expected and the unexpected. Morpheus worked in children's dreams as he worked everywhere, with the specific care appropriate to the specific dreamer. For a child who was afraid of the dark, he might arrange the dream so that the dark was populated with good things: familiar faces, the warmth of a fire, the sounds of safety. For a child who was missing a parent, he might bring the parent's face, the parent's voice, the parent's specific quality of presence. The gift he gave children was the gift he gave everyone, but undiluted, because children received it without the complication of analysis and skepticism and the accumulated habits of waking life. He loved this work in whatever way a divine being loves the work appropriate to their nature. The children's dreams were his clearest expression. The ancient Greeks had something that we sometimes lack: a framework for taking the dream seriously. The mythology of Morpheus gave dreams a place in the cosmic order. Dreams were not random brain activity, or not only that, they were the medium through which the divine and the mortal communicated, through which the sleeping mind encountered something larger than its own daily experience, through which the wisdom that daytime consciousness was too busy to receive arrived in the quiet hours. This is not scientific. The ancient Greeks were not doing neuroscience when they described Morpheus and his work. But science and mythology address different aspects of the same phenomena, and the mythology of Morpheus addresses something that the science of dreams has not fully answered even now. What dreams mean, why dreams matter, what it is that the dreaming mind is doing when it constructs the strange and vivid and sometimes piercing experiences of sleep. Morpheus's answer was, the dreaming mind is receiving, is open, is in contact with something, with the divine, with the deep self, with the accumulated wisdom that waking consciousness can't access in the noise of the day. What we receive in dreams is worth attending to. Not naively, the Greeks knew the difference between the Gate of Horn and the Gate of Ivory, between the true dream and the elaboration, but with respect, with the recognition that something is happening there that deserves more than dismissal. The dream that catches you on waking, the image or the feeling or the specific presence that stays with you as the day begins, that is worth a moment's attention, worth asking what it held, what it showed you, what door it opened into the territory of your own interior that the day has been keeping closed. This is what Morpheus offers. Not magical predictions, not the literal prophecy of kings, but the more generally available gift of access. Access to the deeper levels of the self that sleep makes available, access to the parts of experience that the waking mind processes in the language of image and feeling rather than the language of analysis and language. He is the God of that access. Let us move through the dream world one more time before the night ends. The landscape of sleep is changing. You have been in it for a while now. The waking world has receded. The body has settled into the specific stillness of sleep. The mind has loosened its grip on the day's concerns and is beginning to work with the different materials of the night. The cave of sleep is behind you, at the edge of the world where the poppies nod and Lethe runs its quiet course. You crossed Lethe already, though you may not remember it. This is Lethe's gift, the forgetting of the crossing, so that what you carry into the dream world is what you needed to carry and not the whole weight of everything you have ever known. The light here is not daylight. It is not darkness either. It is the specific light of the dream world, which comes from no single source but is everywhere, the way light is everywhere in the moment between sleep and waking when the dream is still fully real. The landscape you move through has the quality of your own interior. The places that matter to you appear here in the forms that memory has made them, not always accurate in their external details but always accurate in their essential quality. The house you grew up in as it existed in your feeling of it, which is not exactly the same as the house as it existed in the measurements of rooms. The face of someone you love as it exists in your love for them, which is not exactly the same as the face as it exists in photographs. Morpheus is here. He is not immediately visible. He is present the way the best presences in the dream world are present, at the edge of the awareness rather than the center of it. A quality of companionship without intrusion. The sense of being accompanied by something that knows the territory. He moves through the dream world with the ease of someone who has been moving through it since before your world existed. He knows the currents of the dream landscape, where the prophetic dreams run, and where the memory dreams pool, and where the imagination dreams bloom in colors that daylight doesn't produce. He knows how to find the right form for each dreamer, how to arrive as whoever needs to arrive, how to say what needs to be said in the language the dreaming mind can receive. He is preparing something for you. Not a message from the gods, most dreams are not that. Not a prophecy, most dreams are not that either. But the specific gift that each night offers to each particular sleeper, the experience of your own interior in the language that sleep makes available, the images and feelings and scenes that the night assembles from the materials of your life and your imagination and something that may be larger than either. The dream that is yours tonight, the deep part of the night, not the early night when the waking world is still audible, not the late night when the sky begins its slow turn toward morning. The deep middle, the still center, the hours when the world is most thoroughly asleep and the dream world is at its most fully itself. Morpheus is between flights. He rests here in the deep night the way birds sometimes rest on the surface of the sea. Afloat, neither truly in the water nor truly in the air, the wings folded, the body resting in the element between elements. He thinks about the sleepers. Not all of them individually, there are too many, and his brothers and his children and the whole family of night spirits are doing the distributed work of the dream world across the globe's vast sleeping population. But he attends to the work with the general awareness that a conductor has of an orchestra, not playing every instrument but present to the whole performance, aware of how it is going. It is going well tonight. The world is sleeping well. The deep sleep that heals has found those who most needed healing. The dream that carries the missing face has found the ones who were missing it. The dream that opens the door to a memory not thought of in years has arrived at the sleeper who needed the memory. The dreams through the gate of horn are moving toward the sleepers for whom they were prepared, the true visions, the genuine communications. The dreams through the gate of ivory are also moving, the imagination dreams and the elaboration dreams, the ones that are not literally true but are emotionally true, that say something real about the dreamer even when they say it in metaphor and symbol. both kinds doing their work. He is still in the deep of the night, and the stillness has the quality of something fully present. Not waiting, not expecting anything to change. Simply present in the perfection of the moment that the deep night is, which is the most complete stillness the world achieves in its daily cycle, the moment when everything is exactly as still as it can be before the turning toward morning begins. The cave is quiet. Hypnos sleeps. The Lethe runs its quiet course. The poppies outside are invisible in the dark. They are there, red in the darkness, their heads still nodding in the gentle perpetual breeze that came with the cave, that has always been there. Morpheus rests his dark wings and attends to the sleeping world. And the sleeping world dreams. Above the cave of sleep, above the edge of the world where Oceanus runs its circling course, above the clouds and the mist and the specific quality of night that exists at altitude, above all of this is the sky. The Greek night sky was extraordinary. It is still extraordinary in places where the light from human settlement does not reach it, but in the ancient world it was extraordinary everywhere. Every clear night, the full display. The Milky Way visible in its broad arch. The individual stars in their thousands upon thousands. The planets moving through their courses. The moon, when it was there, laying its silver on everything. Nyx moved through the sky. The great goddess of night, the mother of all that the night contained, her chariot moving the dark across the world in its eternal revolution. She was not melancholy. She was magnificent. The darkness she drew across the sky was not deprivation but gift. It was the permission to stop that every living thing needed, the relief from the sun's constant attention, the covering that allowed the restoration that daylight consumed. The stars she wore were navigation and beauty and story simultaneously. The Greeks looked at the sky and saw myths, saw the heroes and the animals and the objects that their mythology had placed there, turning in the great wheel. Orion and Callisto and the Pleiades and Pegasus and all the rest. The sky was not empty. The sky was narrated. And in the narrated sky, above the dreaming world, something moved that was not a star. Morpheus, between his flights, carrying nothing in this moment, simply moving, the great dark wings spread and catching what wind the high sky had, not going anywhere specific, simply being in the sky above the sleeping world, attending to it from this altitude with the specific quality of attention that only altitude provides. Below him, the world. Every window that showed a light was a sleeper attended to by one of his brothers or children or the other dream spirits. Every dark window was a deeper sleeper, a quieter dream, the gate of horn or the gate of ivory delivering its specific cargo to a specific sleeping mind. The world was dreaming. From this height, the dreaming world had a quality that could not be perceived from within it, a quality of rightness, of things being as they should be. The world in its waking hours was activity and complexity and difficulty and beauty, all mixed together in the specific and sometimes exhausting way of conscious life. The world in its sleeping hours was this, the quieter music, the interior life, the restoration. The world dreaming was the world at its most honest. The guards were down, the performances were stopped, the social negotiations were on pause. What remained in each sleeping mind was what was actually there, the loves and the fears and the memories and the hopes, the specific interior landscape of each specific person. He moved through the sky above it all, and he felt what he always felt in these moments. Something that was not quite pride and not quite love but was close to both. A specific quality of regard for the sleeping world below him, for all the fragile, extraordinary, deeply feeling mortal creatures going about their nightly restoration with the specific vulnerability and the specific openness of sleep. He would return to them. He always returned. This was his work and his nature and his gift, and he was never not glad of it. The stars turned above him. Nyx moved her slow chariot across the sky. Hypnos slept in his cave and the poppies nodded. And across the world, every sleeper dreamed. You are dreaming now, or nearly so. The threshold is very close. Morpheus is somewhere nearby, not visibly, not obtrusively, simply present in the quality of the darkness around you and the warmth beneath you and the specific quality of your own thoughts becoming less sharp, less sequential, more like images than like sentences. The gate of horn and the gate of ivory are ahead of you. What comes through them tonight will be yours, will be made of the materials of your life, your loves and your memories and your imagination, assembled by the dream world into whatever form the night decides is right for this particular night of your particular life. You do not need to analyze it before it comes. You do not need to prepare for it or control it. The gift of the dream world is that it comes without your direction. Simply let it come. Let Hypnos give you the sleep that heals. Let Lethe carry away what does not need to travel with you into the night. Let the darkness that Nyx offers be the darkness that receives you completely. The darkness that is not empty but full of the stars that she wears and the dreams that move through her domain and the ancient quiet of a world that has been going to sleep every night since before any story began. Let Morpheus find you. He will come. He always comes. He will take whatever form you need him to take, will bring whatever the night has prepared for you. He will carry you further into the dream than you have been yet, into the specific country that is made of your own interior life given back to you in the forms that sleep makes possible. Rest now. The cave is quiet. The Lethe runs its gentle course. The poppies nod in the eternal breeze. And somewhere above you, on dark wings spread against an ocean of stars, Morpheus is there,